Afternoon. Welcome to the Leader's Pause. I'm your host, Hal Runkel, and as always, we begin with a question. And today's question is, what is the worst relationship advice you've ever received? What is the worst relationship advice that you've ever received, tried to follow, and it just was a disaster? We're going to talk about that and hopefully have some better advice for you when we come back right here on the Leader's Pause.
Welcome to the Leader's Pause, where leaders like you tune in to find calm, get clear, and level up. Tune in with best-selling author, speaker, and coach Hal Runkel as he helps you take back your time, your energy, and your decision-making power. All you have to do is learn to press your own pause button first. So, take a break, take a breath, take a knee, and learn to access your greatest human superpower, the ability to pause, think, and decide for yourself. It's time to find calm, get clear, and level up. The Leader's Pause starts now.
This is Hal Runkel, and this is the Leader's Pause. Welcome to the show. I started with a question, and I got the question because yesterday I did a video interview for a conference, and they wanted to talk about marriage, which I don't talk about nearly as much as I used to, but I still love diving into the topic because while I'm coaching executives on leadership within their organizations for effectiveness, when I build a relationship with a CEO or a high-ranking leader, it doesn't take very long for me to suss out one of the sources of their real concern. And because they know what I used to do, so I started my career as a marriage and family therapist and wrote a book on parenting that became a bestseller, and that launched my career. It's called Scream-Free Parenting. And then we followed it up with a book my wife and I actually wrote together called Scream-Free Marriage. And in case you're wondering, I don't recommend writing a book with your spouse, a marriage book with your spouse. Very challenging. And we decided after that, you know what, we're not going to work together. And we didn't for another 15 years. But now we are back. But back then, that's what I was all focused on. And occasionally I still get asked to speak on that. And I did that yesterday. And it was a lot of fun. So I thought, let's do this show. And one of the questions they asked, what's the worst piece of relationship advice you ever heard, never received? And usually the answer is always the same because there's lots of bad advice out there. Lots. But when it comes to romantic relationships, the worst is any form of compromise. Now, I know that sounds crazy because so many people tout that compromise is the exact key to having a great romantic relationship. You need to compromise. And when people say that, what they're normally meaning is give up your need to have it completely your way. That part, absolutely, completely agree with. And you do too. Because you've seen that when you are doing nothing but trying to get your own way, meaning you think you're right, you think your spouse is wrong, the way they want to do it, your partner is wrong, the way they want to do it is wrong, and you need to convince them, cajole them, persuade them, manipulate them, dominate them, do something to make them see it your way. Even the famous Beatles song, why do you insist on seeing it your way? Try to see it my way. We can work it out. It's this need to see it one way or the other. It gets you in trouble. And that's one of the problems with compromise. The main problem with compromise, and we're going to come back to that, but the main problem with compromise is people think it's leading you towards a win-win, but it's not. See, compromise is, okay, I will give up this as long as I think you are giving up that. So instead of a win-win, we're pursuing a lose-lose. I will lose this as long as I believe you are feeling the same amount of pain that I'm feeling by losing that. So we're building an agreement based on neither one of us being happy, but at least we're mutually unhappy. That's compromise. And you think about it. How many times do we say never compromise? Don't compromise your integrity. Don't compromise on your ethics. Don't compromise on your values. Don't compromise on your standards. Because what that's saying is when you compromise, you're giving up. Think about it. Okay, look at my body language. Hear my voice. So what's the alternative? If I'm not going to compromise, then I've got to fight and get my way, right? And either I win and I'm happy or I lose and I'm unhappy. That's what we think are the only three options. Win, be the victor. Lose, which means be the victim. Or compromise, mean we both lose. What does a win-win look like? That's worth pursuing. But win-wins are messy. They take longer than we think, and they require humility, openness, both self-respect and other respect. But that's the beauty of it. Pursuing a win-win is an agreement that you and I both really feel good about. That takes time, but it requires everything that marriage requires. Think about what we said. It requires self-respect and other respect. Foundation of marriage, foundation of romantic relationships, foundation of any relationship. Self-respect and other respect, but also humility. It does mean don't pursue your own way at the expense of the other. It also means not getting reactive when your partner doesn't see it the way you see it, which is really hard at first. And then it's incredibly freeing because you get to this place where you see that, look, I'm seeing it one way, you're seeing it one way, but what if we, through talking, through sharing, through representing our positions to one another with humility, but also with self-respect, what if we both discover something new altogether that neither one of us could have discovered had we not actually had the conflict, had the difference of opinion? That's the beauty of marriage. So often we think that's the worst part of marriage is we disagree. But the fact that we do see things differently is what gives us the opportunity to both, through our union, come to truths that we never could have seen otherwise, simply because we disagreed. But we disagreed in a way that was humble and loving and respectful. That's what any committed relationship requires of us. And is it tiring? Yes. Is it frustrating? Yes. Exhausting? Yes, can be. All those things. Is it hard? Yes. But you know what? It's a hell of a lot harder than trying to make your spouse agree with you all the time or do what a lot of people eventually do. A lot of men are coached to do this. Just yes, dear. Let her have whatever. Just yes, dear. Okay, whatever. Do you hear that passivity? That's the roots of compromise. That passivity, okay, fine. I can't please you. I can't get my own way, so I might as well let you have yours. Woe is me. Maybe I'll get sex. Those are words I've heard a million times within my own head even as well. We're all faced with that because the alternative is, okay, I got to go to the gym. The mental, emotional gym. That conflict in a relationship with the person who means the most to you always necessitates. And it's the workout. And it's hard. But give you some examples. Are we going to spend this holiday season with your parents or with my parents. When you go into a relationship, it's so easy to think, well, those are the only two options, my family or your family. But here's what that argument leads to. It can lead to a new realization. And this is something when I would work with couples, and I still do on occasion, uh, I would always try to tease out how each partner defines the term family and how each partner defines the term home. Family, if you are constantly saying my family, then who are you married to? Who are you living with? My family or your family? What you're actually referring to, and precision in language is how humans do anything well or better. Precision in language means, okay, we're talking about extended family. But through that conflict, my wife and I both began to realize, wait a second, our family is us. Our extended families are her parents, my parents, her siblings, my siblings, her cousins, my cousins. That's extended family. And guess what? They all belong to the extended family of us. Is there my extended family and her extended family? Yes. But all of those belong together in a group that is beneath in importance our family, which is us, the people who are living together in this home. That's my family. So are we going to spend Christmas with family? Always. Which extended family is a different question. But just framing it that way begins to highlight some new options about how to think. Well, maybe we could just host it ourselves and invite whoever wants to come. We're about to head into a break. I want to get back and I want to talk about other ways that redefinition of family plays in, but also what does it look like when you redefine home? So stay tuned. We're going to come back. This is The Leader's Pause. I'm Hal Runkel, and see you in about a minute. I'm your host, Hal Runkel. I am a best-selling author and speaker and executive coach, and I get to work with leaders all over, helping them find their calm, gain their clarity, and level up their influence. And it is a privilege to get to be a part of people's before and after pictures. And one of the ways that I used to do a lot more than I do now is through working with people in their romantic relationships as well. And so I still get to do that. It's still a passion of mine. I did, with my wife, write a whole book together on it. And yesterday I did a podcast interview about it. So it's been on my brain. And what we've been talking about is the worst relationship advice I've ever gotten, I've ever received or heard. And it all has to do with some form of compromise. You need to compromise yourself, keep the peace, not state your preference. You just need to willingly give up in order to keep things smooth. That sounds awful. And you can't say those words with a positive attitude, with a great tone in your voice, or even good body language. You can't. It's always a good clue. When you're coming across a piece of advice, you say it out loud. Does it raise your vertebrae? Does it put your shoulders back? Does it give you a sense of strength? Or does it, yeah, give up? Okay. Happy wife, happy life. That's another form of it. I just need to do whatever it takes. So give her as much money as she wants. Let her do. Never call her out on her bad behavior. Never tell her no. Never do anything. And maybe again, hopefully she'll cook for me and I'll get some sex or something. I'm mocking that old traditional mindset, but that's what happens when you start down the compromise path, as opposed to the integrity path. Like, I'm going to pursue what I want, but what I want is shared. So I'm going to pursue what I want, but I'm also going to have the humility to recognize what I want is also for her to pursue what she wants, because that's the miracle. The miracle is, what if we actually discover on our own that we want the same thing? We want to watch the same show. We want to have the same amount of kids. Those are great. Doesn't always happen, but it definitely doesn't happen if you're just thinking about, I've got my way, she's got her way, my job is to defeat her way, or my job is to acquiesce to her way. Neither one of those options get you to where you want to go, which is a marriage that is vibrant, challenging, enlivening, frustrating. It's conflict. You married somebody other than you, or you're partnering with somebody other than you. That's why you're with them, because they're other, because they're not you. Is it fun to have someone who does like all the same things? Yeah, but that doesn't help either one of you grow. What helps you grow is when you recognize you are different, and then you learn from one another, and then you learn from different perspectives. And you can begin to appreciate, I could not have seen that without being partnered up with this person. And now that I am, I can see something. One example I gave is the idea that's, well, it's I've got my family and you've got your family. Through a conversation about that, my wife and I discovered, wait a second, our definition of family changed. We're married. My definition of family is me and my wife. Now, here's where it gets crazy. Then we had kids, and then it's really easy to say, well, this is our family. Easier. This is our nuclear family. We had a boy and a girl. So the four of us. But the girl's now married. She's a 27-year-old woman who got married back in March. Who's her family? It's changed. Her family is now not me. I'm her extended family. Her family, her priority, is what she's building with her husband. Then that's the way it needs to be. Is that bittersweet for me? Sure. But it's also part of the point. Part of the point of parenting is launching new adults, not hanging on to kids for as long as possible. Which, by the way, it's just maddening that we still use the phrase raising kids. We don't use that in any other. A corn farmer is not raising niblets, kernels. Not even a goat farmer is raising kids. Goat farmer is raising goats. Tree farmer is not raising saplings, raising trees. Why do we say we're raising kids? I already had kids. We're raising adults. And the whole point is to launch them into a full-fledged adulthood where they're totally responsible for all their decisions and where they prioritize their relationships. And the relationship with us is going to go away, is fading as her relationship with her husband is increasing, and that's the way it should be. So that's family. Where's her home? These are closely related. Definition of home. So something I'm always listening for when I'm working with couples. I've done a ton of work with the U.S. military all over the world. And you go to Korea and you're working with a couple that's struggling, and it's not at all uncommon, it's actually more common than not, to hear both of them talk about, can't wait to get back home. Well, what do they mean? The United States and a particular part of the United States, usually related to their childhood. But here's my question to them was always, okay, so if that you're waiting to get home, so where are you now? And if you've got kids, where are they now? So is your home where you grew up? Well, so your home is not the same as their home now? It doesn't make sense. My home is wherever I am with my most committed relationships. Wherever I reside, that's my home. Home is not defined by geography. It's not defined by architecture. It's not defined by history. Again, this is another thing that happened because we refused to compromise, is we began to just have difficult conversations. My home has changed. And I remember going back to my daughter again. My daughter, it was junior year. And you remember, if you went to college, you remember junior year, that summer, you were probably doing an internship, or junior year during Christmas, things were a little bit different when you went back home for that holiday because your life had changed and your loyalties had changed and your most important relationships are shifting to your friends, your roommates, your friends, your sorority or fraternity folks, siblings. And I remember my daughter, it was junior year, it was Christmas break. She'd been with us for like 3 weeks and it was after Christmas. And she was like, you know what? I think it's time I go home. Which we looked at her and kind of turned our head like, your dog sometimes looks at you when they're intrigued or confused. She meant going back to Nashville where she was going to college, leaving Atlanta here where she grew up, but going back to Nashville to her house where she lived with her roommates. A shift was happening. Her definition of home was changing. It's one of the most vital things I can recommend to couples is recognize how you use the terms family and home. Because making that shift, especially if you're actually full-fledged commitment married, is absolutely vital. In fact, that's so much of what the Hebrew Bible talked about in Genesis chapter 2 is man must leave his mother and father and join to his wife. Why? Well, because leaving mom and dad is what makes you mature. And marriage requires maturity more than anything. So, how is your romantic relationship challenging you to grow up right now? How is it challenging you to be more mature? I guarantee it is. And the next time you think, well, I'm just supposed to acquiesce and let him have his way or let her have his way, pause, reconsider it. Get curious about what their way is, but don't sacrifice yours just to keep the peace. Find something else. Find something higher than either one of you could have on your own. That's a beauty. This has been The Leader's Pause. Thank you for being with me. I'm your host, Hal Runkel. You can always reach me at halrunkel.com, and we'll see you next time.
You have been listening to The Leader's Pause with Hal Runkel, the show that helps leaders like you find calm, get clear, and level up. Tune in every first and third Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern on Transformation Talk Radio to access your greatest superpower, the ability to pause, think, and decide for yourself. Book a conversation with Hal today. Visit halrunkel.com.